Oh, happy Tuesday, everyone. I mean, is it Tuesday is it Tuesday in the Antipodean world? Are Australia and hello, by the way. Hi, sorry. I've eaten a lot of cake today. Is Australia and New Zealand, is it Wednesday or is it Tuesday morning? I don't know. Anyway, oh God, you were talking about cardamom. Cardamom's disgusting. I assume you've all been on Twitter. Ugh. I'm so sick of cardamom. I remember when cardamom was exciting and interesting Bake Off, and now I just feel like every time they're like, ooh, want to be edgy, they stick cardamom in. Just make it taste nice. Stop trying to be edgy. Thank you very much. Happy birthday. Thank you. I had a lovely birthday, actually. I get quite bad anxiety about birthdays, and I want to be adored and fussed over, but I also don't want to put people out or ask them to adore me and fuss over me. So I often quite struggle with not really making plans and then being a bit sad that no plans happen. So this year I had my brother and his girlfriend, and they came over, and we did a magic draft. Now, I don't know if you play Magic the Gathering, but it's very nerdy. Yeah, so we did a draft, which is where you get new cards and you draft a new deck out of random cards, basically, and then play each other. Well, your birthday's New Year's Eve. It's grim. Oh, bless you. That is tough, isn't it? New Year's, I hate New Year's. I hate New Year's so much. It's one of my favorite things about being a stand-up is that I don't have to do New Year's. I'm working sad. Boo. Did I see Klopp facing down Roy Keane? I did, Ben. I did. He was quite angry. I was quite surprised, actually, because he really went off on a rant, having only heard one word of it, which didn't feel like the Klopp I don't know and love, because you'd have thought he'd have needed all the information before he really kicked off about it, but he went with it. Yeah, I really quite enjoyed it. There was nothing loose about it. Was that what he said? Sloppy was it? There was nothing sloppy. Oh, no sloppiness for Klopp. Sloppy cloppy. Hey, Chris. Yeah, great minds. I mean, it wasn't that difficult, was it? No offense to you, Chris, but we got there. Nothing beats a bit of geeky fun. I agree. And they made me a cake, which was so nice because obviously, like, I make a cake for Tom for his birthday, or make him something, but then he doesn't really cook or bake, so he just never gets me one. Which is not a complaint. He does lots of lovely things to me, but a cake, because I make the cakes, the cake always goes out the window. But he made me a cake. My brother did, with Judith, his girlfriend, which is very, very nice of them. Erdinger have released a special clock glass. Is it shaped like him? Because I would drink from that. Sipping the nectar. My hubby made me a chocolate Rice Krispie cake. Well, that sounds delicious. What did you throw out a window, Mystic? A cake? No. Kim threw a kid out the window? What? I don't know what's been happening in the chat, but I think a baby's been thrown out a window. If you're watching this on catch up and have any idea what's going on, well done. Yeah, so I missed you guys over the weekend, actually. It feels like a long time since we've done one of these, but it's only been 3 days, hasn't it? Sarah was in this Next Up Zoom gig. Ooh, who was on, Sarah? Oh, you said cake goes out the window on birthdays. Right. Yeah, okay. I don't listen to myself. God, no. Ugh, I'd go crazy if I listened to all the crap I was saying. I'm doing a Next Up thing on Wednesday. I'm doing a panel where we discuss being successful on social media, which would be interesting because I think my best advice is just going to be, I don't know, it was an accident. I just always tweet nonsense, and every now and again the nonsense takes off. That's my best advice. Oh, Norcott and Sarah Keyworth. Oh, I love Sarah Keyworth, and Jeff's a comedian too. No, I do like Jeff. He's a sweetheart. Well, liked my dinner party podcast today. Oh, thank you. I really enjoyed doing that. I really enjoyed doing that. It was such a pleasure to talk to Connor. So for those of you that don't know, I was on a podcast called The Dinner Party Podcast, which was released on Friday. And basically you pick 5 people to invite to a dinner party and you say where you'd have it. But it was just such a lovely chat. I really enjoyed talking through my choices and the meal plan and why I'd chosen them. It was so, so lovely. He didn't even start the topic for over 20 minutes. I know. He was so lovely to chat to and really interesting. And what I really liked about the Dinner Party podcast was that he'd done a little bit of research on everybody. Like, I didn't pick super obscure people, but he'd done enough research that he could ask good questions. I think all too often on podcasts, and something that really bugs me, of course, got an invitation. I had to apologize to him. Something that really bugs me about podcasts a lot is you just get asked really similar questions, and like they'll Google you and look at a little bit of your stuff, and they'll be like, so comedy about depression, or comedy about this, or blah blah blah. And it's just a bit, I don't know, it's very samey. Like, there's so many podcasts I've been on where they go like, oh, please share the link, and you go, yeah, but people have heard this crap from me before. Like, it's nothing new. Whereas on this one, like, Connor, bless him, has been to see a few of my shows, so we could talk quite in depth about what I'd done. And then with the people, he'd done some research, which was really nice. Funny Face is a much more entertaining film than Breakfast at Tiffany's. Agreed. Sabrina's my favourite Audrey Hepburn film. Thank you, Sarah, for the happy birthday. Stu Goldsmith does do the work, Ben. Yes. So, right, we should do a chapter, shouldn't we? Chapter 22. Now, I've got a confession to make, because you are owed two ramifications, all right? So the last two things that you voted on haven't quite happened yet, because I really had plans to put chapter 20's ramification in this one, which was the ramification of the name, but it just didn't happen. But it's rolled over. It is still going to happen. I'm not cheating you out of the plot, but it just hasn't happened yet. It's building. And then whether you chose night or day had a ramification. So I have set it at the time that you asked for. Yes, and that also had, I made a plan for that too, but that also hasn't happened, because when I got writing this bit, it just took longer. So you're owed two ramifications. They will absolutely happen in the next chapter. I will tell you that by voting, there was one vote in it for when they got topside, and you were one vote off them being attacked topside by Van Weer's troops. So boom, you got the better outcome, I think. So yeah, so for chapter 23 tomorrow night at 10, we've got some big stuff happening. It's going to be a V excites, as the young people say. So chapter 22. Apologies if the reading is bad. I'm quite run down. I'm not very well at the moment, and I get terribly my tongue, I don't know what to call it. It just sounds gross, however I describe it. But basically, my tongue seizes up around the edges, and it makes it very difficult to swallow or talk. So you might see some very laboured swallowing, and maybe some dribbling. Ooh. Chapter 22. The first thing Maureen noticed was the moisture on her cheeks as she reached the top side. It was cool and calming. It felt like it was stroking her skin as it moved about across her face. It was dark topside, the sun having long since departed from the distant sky. Maureen looked up to see the stars, but could see nothing except white fluff. She reached out a hand to try and touch the fluffy nestling stuff, but as her hand made contact, it floated away and dispersed and was nothing. Her hand came back damp. The humans call it fog, said Briar, leaning in to speak quietly. Maureen felt the hum of their skin next to hers, and she had to shake her head a little to disperse the tingling feeling that accumulated on the back of her neck. What do you call it? She asked. Cover, laughed Briar, and stole a look at Maureen. Maureen smiled. It makes it easier to move about undetected on nights where the fog lies, Briar continued. It tends to settle low and heavy, but it's made... What have I meant to type there compared to what I've actually typed? Tends to settle low and heavy. What's that meant to say? What I've written is, it tends to settle low and heavy, but it's made stuff. But it hurt. I don't know what that's meant to say. I'm just going to have to delete that. I'm usually quite good at editing this on the fly, but I don't know what that's meant to be. Oh, mystics crossed that Marine isn't rescuing her. How is she supposed to? She's been kidnapped by these topsiders. Does this all happen in a park in Bath? Yes. The Tingian world is happening concurrently with Emma. So I don't know where we were on chapter 22. I expect somebody's very good at knowing what's happening in the chapters. We should see what Emma was up to in chapter 22. And that's where we currently are with the Tingians. It tends to settle low and heavy, makes you invisible, but it isn't actually there. As long as you're in layers, it can't hurt you. Oh, I remember what that means. As long as you're in... Oh my God, we should bring Elliot into the story. That could be quite fun. Need to make a note of that. Good work. You deserve a pay rise, Outworld. Maureen shivered, already feeling the dampness permeating her bones. She desperately wanted to continue the conversation with Briar, but she couldn't think of anything else to say or ask that didn't seem vaguely dim or pathetic, so she just walked along in silence, trying her best to keep pace with Briar's long legs without panting. They seemed to have a large hedge to the left of them as they made their way over cracked, solid mud. Every now and again, Maureen could make out small leaves above her head. They were outlined against the sky. Maureen found everything so confusing. How could the sky be dark and yet still be light enough to show the outline of dark leaves against it? She wanted answers, but more than that, she didn't want to ask Briar something so childish that they laughed, so she kept her mouth shut. The line of Tingians stayed tight into the hedge as they moved along. The ground was bare and dry, and Maureen had to jump large cracks every 100 paces or so. Some cracks were so big she could have fallen in without trouble. Some were narrower, just threatening to catch a foot or a shin and make you trip. The topsiders had less trouble. Their long legs loped across, and Briar almost seemed to know where each and every crack was to avoid it. Maureen had no such experience and had to watch carefully with every step. To their right, across the chasm of bare, dry earth, were hundreds of hugely tall, thin plants that shot out of the ground and up towards the night. They swayed and banged into each other gently, and if Maureen craned her neck so far back that it hurt, she could see swollen bulbs on the top that swayed more than the rest of the stems. Maureen marvelled. It was the other side of the world. She knew the roots of all these plants. She could smell the scents of roots she was familiar with here, but here they were coming off the other side of the plant. It was fascinating. Why did the roots need these parts? She wondered. Were they integral to the roots living in some way? She knew roots sucked water out of the soil and that was how they ate and drank, but perhaps these other sides had purposes too that helped the roots. She wished she'd paid more attention in school. Her legs were beginning to tire as they came to the end of the hedgerow on the left, and the party stopped so that Briar could check for danger. Before them was just grass now, low cut and offering less chance to hide than the hedge. Briar looked about and listened carefully to the wind. They sniffed long and deep and then stood silently with their eyes closed and absorbing the air around. As they stood quietly, Maureen realized she could hear something. A gentle, elegant what? It was certainly a movement, so she wanted to say vibration or rumbling, but that wasn't quite it. It was softer and more elegant than rumbling. It was unlike anything she had heard before. She could feel it, too, in her feet, like the beats, but constant and less rigid, less performed. It felt like something she recognized but had never seen or heard. Okay, I think it's clear. Briar's voice interrupted her thoughts with a practiced loud whisper. We'll cross. Briar nodded to the other topsiders, and each one pulled out a knife and ran it through the bindings on the hands of the team. Go quickly and smoothly. Only stop when you reach the river. If you think now's a good time to escape, then you have my blessing, but avoid the foxes and the owls. If you're going to get caught, pray for an owl. Enjoy the ride, because it will be the last thing you ever know. Maureen opened her mouth to ask what an owl, or a river, was, but before the words could leave her lips, the topsiders had gone. They paced away across the grass, dodging blades lightly and leaving an alarming gap almost instantly. She looked from Ezria to Karan in a panic and saw Ezria shrug and begin to jog. Morklade and Rashek were already running. Maureen picked up her heels and chased them down, hoping that a river would be obvious enough that she would know to stop at it before it killed her. She ran as hard as she could, making sure not to stray too far from Morklade, who was ever so slightly slower than the rest of the group. She could just make out the figures of the topsiders in the distance and kept her eyes pinned on them as they ran. Then, suddenly, they were gone. Marine's feet pounded on the ground as she ran through the grass, avoiding the stronger blades and keeping her arms up to stop them whipping across her eyes as she ran. She peered into the distance, but the heads of the topsiders had vanished. Was it an ambush? She looked left and right for signs of attack. Why would they set them free only to attack, though? Surely it would have been easier to do when they were secured. Was it the hunt? Had Marine misjudged Briar? Her mind was racing as fast as her feet when all of a sudden the next step she took never met ground. Her feet flailed about beneath her, reaching only air, and her torso carried on moving forward as she fell forward and down a slope. Her chest hit the floor with a thump, and she skidded painfully down loose stones and tiny, tiny pieces of pebble. She rolled over and over before finally coming to a complete stop. Marine lay still, trying to get her breathing back to normal and get rid of the rushing sound in her ears. The ground was trembling. Are you all right? Marine opened her eyes to see Briar's face looming over her own. Yes, she wheezed. Yes, I fell. We saw, said Briar, smiling kindly and offering her hand up to help Marine. Well, I did say to stop before the river, and you did just that. Marine sat up, and as her head raised, she saw it. An enormous, writhing mass of water fighting itself on a race across the ground. Marine yelped and skittered backwards away from it, sending loose bits of grit and sharp things flying into the air. It looked incredible, Marine had to admit. The light from the sky was dancing on the surface and shimmering and shining. She'd never seen so much water in one place, never seen it moving with such intensity or ferocity. She was absolutely spellbound. Beautiful, she heard Briar's voice say, and Marine looked up to agree with them. But when she turned her head, she saw that Briar wasn't looking at the river at all. There you go. That is chapter 22. So your choice for tomorrow. I'd forgotten that we give her a surname. I'd completely forgotten that. God, you guys are so much better at this than I am. Yeah, Skylon. That's a good surname. Oh dear, I've got a terrible memory for stuff like this. There's so many times when I'm writing these, I have to go back and check, and I'm writing post-it notes everywhere. The Emma story was much simpler. I've not made this one easy for myself. So your question for tomorrow is choose a mode of transport. You can pick sailing, flying, or land transport. Those are your choices. Sailing, flying, or land. How are they going to travel? Sailing, flying, or land. And those are your Wednesday choices. So decide what you think. And there will be the culmination of many ramifications tomorrow. I'm quite excited about writing tomorrow's chapter. I can picture it all in my head, which doesn't happen often because I've got a very terrible imagination for images. I can imagine words, and when I imagine things, I imagine how you spell the words of them, but I can't often picture things, but I can kind of picture tomorrow. So you can get voting, and I shall see you for another live stream at 10 p.m. tomorrow. Take care, happy voting, and thanks for coming. Bye.